All right, everybody, thanks so much for stopping by another live episode of Real Estate Titans. I'm your host, Greg Fowler, traveling throughout the marketplace, interviewing the top real estate professionals in our field, essentially gathering insight, inspiration, what really drives and motivates these top producers above and beyond everybody else, and what I'd like to consider a real estate titan. Now, our very special guest and featured titan for today, all the way from beautiful Canada, I'm so honored and excited, Sara Kalke. Sara, thank you so much for taking the time. It's an absolute honor and a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
For sure. And actually, when we're doing this, let me, on the fly here, let me switch the angles here. Okay. But yeah, Sara, it's just, I cannot wait to share your story with the audience and the Titan Nation out there. There's just so many tools and takeaways and just thought processes from a true pro such as yourself. So if you're ready, let's just jump into the questions and knock it out.
Right on. Let's do this.
Okay. So let's just start with the first one, telling everybody a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Sara. I'm born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is basically Montana straight north and then north some more. We still haven't got a foot of snow on the ground.
Whoa.
And it's cold for like 6 months of the year. But as you can see behind me, my whole life has been really based around this one idea that when I was a little kid, even though I grew up in the city, I wanted nothing more than to be a cowgirl when I grew up.
Okay. And I love the fact that you had mentioned, just really talking about growing up and your surroundings and, the fact that there's still snow out there, it makes me feel chilly. I mean, right now in Colorado, it's 69 degrees, 70 degrees, but we just had snow a few days ago, but it melts so fast. So it's definitely a different conversation to have. Somebody who might be in California or, Texas, Arizona, something a little bit warmer climates, they don't understand. But Sara, with that being said, what's your pathway to where you are today in your life and career through real estate? Why real estate in the first place? Kind of what brought you to where you are to today?
Well, it's a long tale, but begins and ends with the horse.
Okay.
So I grew up in Edmonton, right in the city. My dad was a high school teacher, and who grew up on a farm. So my whole life was based on all of these like legendary stories. My dad's named Hank, and all the people who've heard me speak, and everybody knows Hank. Hank's famous.
Oh, that's awesome.
And Hank always told these romantic stories about growing up on the farm, and he had this horse named Rocket that was this horse that they got off the track, and he would walk home from his one-room school and hop the fence, and Rocket would always meet him all the way at the far end of the pasture, and he'd just take his belt off and put it around Rocket's neck and get on his bareback and race as fast as he possibly could home.
Whoa.
So even though I grew up in the city, I've always had this like love of the Wild West and of horses and of just everything that it means to be a cowgirl, which is, as badass as it possibly gets. You're brave and you're bold and you're adventurous. And so I either wanted to be a cowgirl or a pilot.
Okay.
So I was made for adventure. I think it's always, how things go. And wove my way through life. I ended up as a competitive wall climber for a good decade. So I've actually been to Colorado Springs to an international climbing competition.
Love that.
And I was on Team Canada and we'd travel around and do stuff, which is really fun. And then I was going to be a chemist in university, and a chem prof talked me out of it. He was like, "Don't do that. It's the worst. Like, you hate it. Do something you're passionate about."
Okay. Good advice.
While we never had the money to ride horses or do anything horse related, I was always in classical music when I was a kid. So the love for that developed into what I ended up getting a degree in university, which was flute performance. So yes, I'm a person of many random loves. So,
this is
I did a degree in flute performance, and I got to travel through Asia and Europe and be this musician, and I loved it. It was amazing. But just like chemistry, it's something that I love doing, but I didn't love the career of it. It was a really, 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 really difficult job. It was the most amazing thing to do. But once I wrapped up my degree, I came back home to Edmonton. I studied in Vancouver. I came back to Edmonton just to work for a year, and the plan was I was supposed to go to Europe and become a professional musician.
Okay.
And I even won the scholarship in university for the person most likely to become a professional musician.
Wow.
And little did they know that I would head home to Alberta. I worked just for this family friend in the summers of university who happened to be a real estate agent.
Okay.
And I started at his office answering the phone, like, good morning, Remax Real Estate. This is like my job. I entered it, this is a while ago, it was in like 2005. So there were still some agents who had like pagers. So I'd like page them messages.
Love
they
it.
sound like super old. And then my dad happened to have a conversation with my uncle.
Mm-hmm.
And my Uncle Paul is this, like, he's a legend. He's one of the most like original cowboys that you've ever met. Like, he's always wearing his hat and his clothes are always like perfect. His pants are like starched and pressed in the middle. And he's like has the most beautiful Western singing voice. He plays like the auto harp, and he just bought this farm where he could have horses again. Kind of long story of his life. And my dad and him were having this conversation. I didn't know. And my dad said to my Uncle Paul, the one biggest regret I've always had in my life is that I was never able to buy a horse for Sara.
Wow.
And my uncle was like, wait, what? Sara likes horses? I didn't know this. And, because he had a daughter, but he was super into the Western world, and she rode, and she was an amazing English rider. And so he was like, wait, what? There's somebody else in the family who might be interested in what I am. So he went out 3 days later, bought a horse for me.
Wow.
At like an auction sale. And this horse was like a foul, rank, nasty creature, this like red dun mare. And I still I see red horses and I like get a twitch in my eye.
You're like, wait a minute.
She's like pulled back, which means like the second you tied her up, she'd like try and get away. And she'd like run off and she'd buck, and you'd like turn the corner and you'd be out in the fields riding, because we didn't have nowhere else to ride. So you just ride way out in the field, and you turn the corner for home, and she would be on just a flat out runaway as fast as she possibly could.
Wow.
And but first, I loved it so much that I rode 6 or 7 days a week. And little did my classical music world know, it would quickly become such a love of my life that I completely quit classical music, like literally cold turkey. And then I met my husband, which is no small detail in the process. I met him here in Edmonton. And the dream of being a classical musician was totally over. No more going to Europe. I stayed in Alberta. And, like as life goes, I kind of thought, okay, I really want to be a cowgirl. Like, I'm just going to live this dream. Had this horse. And my uncle took me to this really cool show. And it was like in this huge arena. It's a big deal. It's called the Supreme.
Okay.
Which is like the best name. Like, anything awesome would be called the Supreme. Right?
Agreed.
So we go to the Supreme and we go in and we start watching, and it's these sports I didn't even know existed. Like, the only thing I knew about as far as like horses in that world was like, kind of rodeo stuff, like barrel racers or ropers or whatever. And we go in and it's like these two sports. And I remember sitting there and thinking, one day I'm going to do that. And so the two sports were cutting and cow horse, which are these like out of the Spanish tradition from California. And they're these absolutely magical, beautiful sports that we do. And you can see in the pictures behind me that those horses are wearing all of the Spanish bits and stuff. Like, that's what this is. If you see it on the side, it's all
very cool,
coordinated stuff, and like hand braided rawhide. And it's just, I can't be any more romantic about something. I love it so much.
Oh, that's huge.
And so I dedicated basically my whole life. I thought, okay, well, what can I do so that I can afford to do like cow horse and cutting? And they're not cheap.
Right.
I thought, maybe I'll be a lawyer. So I write the LSAT. I'm right about to be like go into law school. And my sister talks me out of it. She's like, Sara, can we have a real conversation? Like, you hate sitting still, for one, and you hate being a lawyer because you have to pay your dues. It's so hard to do. It's like one of the worst things ever. Like, you don't even make any money for 20 years and you're a slave and you won't be able to have a life and all this stuff. And so she thoroughly talked me out of it. Yet this whole time I was working in a real estate office.
Right.
And I was working for this friend of my dad's, like super old school. Like, I'm sure you've had them, like definitely had them on the podcast, like the really old school guys, and they're all the closing lines and like, you know, don't leave the appointment, like physically don't leave until you have the listing. That was like the game, right?
Sure.
Which is totally weird for me. And I'm just like this music nerd, horse lover, whatever, that, you know, I just wanted to kind of, you know, make my money and get out to ride horses.
Sure.
And the thing with real estate and politics, if you've ever been in, you know, real estate offices, you know, especially the old school ones, there's all these rivalries.
Right.
So the guy that I worked for had all of these rivals because he was really successful, but really kind of old school and had like, not everybody was really psyched about him winning. And it's just like that with anyone. It's not that he wasn't a great guy or anything. It's just that's how it is, right?
Sure.
And they all wanted to take him down. So they'd all stop at my office door. And this time I was a full-time assistant to him. And they'd all be like, you know, you could do this. And then the next day they'd be like, you make a great real estate agent. And I was like, born and raised like hustler. My dad grew up on a dairy farm. So like work ethic, like we didn't get 100% in school. It was a fail. It's like we were those kids who are like, where's the other 2%?
Oh, yes, I hear you.
Yeah, it was like high achievement all the way. So I ended up, like, long story short, becoming a real estate agent very much by accident.
Okay.
And the only reason was I was like, well, it seems like a reasonable way to pay for horses. I was not somebody who was like, oh, I just want to be a salesman. I want to like sell stuff to people. I want to like high pressure them or anything. I was like even to this day, I usually open my talks with asking the audience, like when someone asks you what you do for a living, do you ever say like, I am in real estate? You don't say like, you're not like straight up like, I am a real estate agent. Like I'm a real estate sales. I'm like, I'm in real estate because like maybe I do something that's slightly cooler than actually a real estate agent. Maybe I'm like a developer, like a property manager, like investment guru, but like no, I'm a real estate agent.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's really where it came from. And like literally the beginning, middle, and end of my story is all everything, all the tweaks I've made, everything that I do, it's to find this like sweet spot between doing a career, which it turns out that I really, really love.
Right.
And fueling my passion for horses. And I think the biggest lesson along the way, and we'll talk about this as we go along, is that it's easy to be out of balance. It's easy to just focus on one thing, you know, having fun, or the other, working and achieving, especially if you're someone like me that was born to believe that like you're really only worth something if you're like the number one at it.
Sure.
It became to the point where, yes, I was a real estate agent and I was doing real estate, but I wasn't riding my horses at all. So at that point, I only had one horse. Okay. And I just wasn't riding. And I was like doing really well. I was on these like, you know, young achiever panels and rookie of the year and all this stuff because I have like the German farmer work ethic from Hank. Hank.
Yes, thanks, Hank.
Hank is awesome, by the way. So I'm like working so hard. And Remax invites us down to Phoenix to this like top producer. They call it, what do they call it? The Elite Retreat.
Okay.
I love the names of this stuff. It's the Elite Retreat. Like you're just like, you've made it, right?
Well named. Yeah, for sure. Supreme, Elite, there's all kinds of, this is great.
Titans, the same. It's like all the same stuff, right?
It's there. I love it.
I'm like, okay, you know, and you show up and you're in the room and you kind of feel like, I've made it. Like I am with the best of the best, right? So we're all there and we're like super excited, like, yeah, best of the best. And we sit down and the first day is a whole day, like morning to evening session, just like a small group of people and Darren Hardy.
Okay.
And Darren Hardy, if you don't know him, like most people probably do, Darren Daly, whatever.
Yep.
He comes across, I think in most of the stuff that he does, is this like really nice guy.
Okay.
Like, you know, just kind of vanilla, like, you know, be your best every day, like, you know, compound effect, like 1% better every day. So, you know, I read his book, I was like prepared, right? Super nerd. And we sit down and he rips us apart.
Whoa.
Like, not even like, hey, you know, it's so great to be here. It's such a privileged group of people. You're so successful, like kind of patting us on the butt a little bit. Like it was literally like, this is a room full of idiots. You're all underperformers. You're all morons. I can't even believe I have to waste my time with you. Like it was, I think everybody in the room wanted to leave.
Oh,
in
wow.
the first hour. And his exercise, like he has these workbooks. It's like the Darren, always have my notebooks. So it's like the Darren Hardy workbook. So you have this workbook.
Love it.
And he's having you like literally fill in the blanks, the stuff he says, because it seems like he thinks you're like too dumb to actually like even listen to the whole sentence, which he actually, like, it's true. And
Wow.
the whole thing was about how addicted we are to our phones and
Mm-hmm.
how none of us are doing a good job at life at all. And all these like dreams we so-called had are just passing us by while we pursue wealth and success and all this other stuff, right?
Right.
And like what a more perfect time to be having these revelations than like today, April 7th, in the
Mm.
middle of COVID crisis. Like
Right.
it was kind of what I think we're all feeling right now. It was that moment of like, you know, what will it benefit you
Mm-hmm.
if all you focus on is just making money, but you've lost all the things you got into it for?
Oh, wow. Well
And
said.
that's right. Like it's
Yeah.
a hard thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for everybody right now. We're all in our little house bubbles,
Mm-hmm.
and you see how all the different bubbles are colliding with the, the bubbles around them, right? We're like, do this, act this, do this, whatever. And Darren Hardy's message wasn't pour it on. That's a famous Hankism. He always said pour it on. It wasn't
Okay.
that. It wasn't work harder.
Hmm.
And it wasn't all these things that are like catchwords right now, have more discipline, have more whatever. It
Right.
was like, give your head a shake.
Hmm.
Like you are capable of so much more if you just get like a rein on like some pretty simple things in your world, most of which was like your phone,
Mm-hmm.
which was the funniest thing. You think this like top performing guy, you would think Darren Hardy would be like, go exercise and eat all this stuff and whatever. He was like, master the rectangle. I call it the rectangle, but like really figure
Oh.
out how to focus. And when you learn how to focus on anything that you're doing, you do
Mm-hmm.
one thing right at a time,
Right.
then you will start to see that compound effect and that exponential result. And even today, I was just talking with some coaching clients this morning about this
Mm-hmm.
very thing. Like, especially those of us who are parents, thankfully, like I have my husband at home who's
Sure.
able to do some of the juggling with me, but like, you can't be a great parent and a homeschool teacher and a chef and a cook and a like professional desanitizer of things and
Right.
sanitizer. I don't know, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
there's so many things, and what Darren would have said would be, pick one thing, do it well, check it off. Pick the
Mm-hmm.
next thing, do it well, check it off. And that really, that mindset, that like skill set,
Mm-hmm.
I'm by no means a master of it. Like not even like barely peeling the first layer of the onion, I feel. But
Right.
that's really what made the transition from, barely cracking $500,000 in commissions every
Mm.
year, to doing way more than that.
Right.
Selling, last 4 years, 100 houses a year, no problem, but being
Awesome.
off every other weekend, no buyer's agent, didn't buy any leads,
Mm.
have a small but mighty team of admin staff.
Wow.
And that's been our whole play, is like, be really good at the things that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And that will allow you to live the rest of your life, because what does it matter if you made a whole bunch of money?
Right.
It doesn't, it really, yes, it matters kind of, because it's like you need money,
Sure.
but it's all has to come back to not just your fun hobbies, but like,
Mm-hmm.
who are you?
Yep.
And knowing that those are the parts of the journey that I really learned throughout this. I mean, I was just trying to buy a horse and be a cowgirl and go show cow horses, really, but I ended
Right.
up with all these life lessons and the ability to help agents find their own stuff in their lives that they actually really tried to get into real estate for, but never quite made it. So
Sure.
that's the cool, that's like my whole life story. There you go.
I thought it was incredible all the way. I'm just like waiting to hear more. We're going to dive a little bit deeper in there, Sara, but I mean, you had so many amazing and applicable takeaways right off the bat. So hopefully everybody's really excited about this. We haven't even gotten into the deep stuff yet, so we're going to get there real soon. But I think that gave everybody a really nice window into who you are and really the progression of your career in your life and some of that backing behind it. But this goes a little bit deeper, and you might have already mentioned a few keys in there, but the next question is the why question. So Sara, really what motivates you, what drives you, gets you excited every day out of bed to do what you do to the level that you do it at? What's your why?
Well, I think, I never look at things that I do and I'm like, I do it at this high level and I'm so awesome and I crush it. And, I kind of think I do the best of what I can. But, I think God for sure is my number one. And that's gone through a lot of permutations over my life. I've gone through the very intellectual kind of side and now just landing in this kind of soft place of faith is what starts my day and ends my day. And all the little, pockets in between are all filled with, prayer, meditation, connection, everything that, like, people all the time give me this credit, like, oh, you sell all these houses and you have this great business. And I always say, I can't explain how it all works. I know what, my prayers are at the beginning and end of every day, which is, I, pray for abundance. I pray for abundance for all those people who blessed our family, that they be blessed even more. But the coolest thing about the fact that things have worked out how they have is that people come to me, like sellers come to me. I don't have I'm not like the only agent, but it's like the right people just show up and then the next right person shows up. And people say, well, how do you do it? Like, you don't have a buyer's agent. So how is it that you work? I probably work about 60% listings and 40% buyers. And I work with the buyers. Like, how do you do that being gone every other weekend, especially in the spring and summer? I'm like, literally, I can't explain it. I will leave on Friday and my phone won't really ring until Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
Maybe Sunday night. And if it does, maybe I get some text messages. Like, obviously I'm a real estate agent, so, I'll have some things kind of come and go, but
sure.
It's like the phone won't ring until the end of the day. Once I've already shown my horses and I've had my family time. And it's kind of like everybody in our world. I've fallen in this trap many times where you think, oh, I have to work 12, 14-hour days, 7 days a week.
Right.
But as soon as you start respecting the fact that, you're supposed to take a day off every week, like you're supposed to.
Yep.
And when you take that time and you spend it with your family and you do the things you're supposed to, it doesn't take away from your business. It makes it better.
Well
so
said.
my number one is always God. I always have three things in my life that, if it's not a yes to these things, it's a no.
Yeah.
And that's always, family. Is so important. To me, I used to say fitness, and I'm not I don't really like fitness.
Okay.
I decided, you kind of go through these things where you're like, I should like fitness. So it's not really fitness anymore for me. It's just, it's like horses or passion, like just doing stuff that I love.
Right.
Are so important. And then faith, of course. So you can say fitness, but to me, it's more just are my horses fit? It's not am I fit.
But that's a part of exercise and just good well-being. It's not, you have to be a fitness nut or in the gym all the time. There's all different things to be healthy. And it's kind of everything that you're saying, healthy mind, body, and spirit, right? Yeah. I mean, that's really what you're looking at the end of the day. And I think that you're putting God and family and your clients' abundance above and beyond everything else. And that's why one of the many reasons why I feel that you're so successful is because it's selfless. It is for others. And you're making impacts in the communities that you serve because of this mentality and attitude. And anybody who knows and loves and respects you, they feel this. And I think that it's important because not every real estate professional is equal. And none of us are. We're all different, but there's different layers and levels. And it's not putting anybody down or putting anybody more above, but it is what it is. And the consumers need to understand that there are different processes and different ways to get things done. And the fact that you have boundaries on your life, I think, is phenomenal. It's really difficult for a lot of top producers to have that mentality. It's a constant struggle because it isn't about us, it's about them. So we leave ourselves open and vulnerable to 7 days a week and 365 and all these different things. And you're not doing anybody any favors. You're hurting yourself, you're hurting your family. You're actually hurting your clients by doing that because you're not the best version of yourself. So everything that you had mentioned is a perfect example or a blueprint, if you will, to really try to go for that balance. And like you said, I mean, Sara, you're learning every day just like anybody else. And no one has it dialed in 100%. It's unrealistic. But you have to put the effort. you have to try, and using your words, focusing on what really matters and prioritizing. So I think that your messaging is beautiful all the way through and through. And I know that a lot of people are like, yes, this is what we need to hear. This is exactly what's going on. Everybody needs a reminder, and it doesn't matter who you are, how long you've been in the business, or if you're brand new to it, or if you're not in real estate at all and you're just an entrepreneur. That's why I love these conversations and dialogue. And it speaks a lot about you, Sara, the things that you've just mentioned. I want to shift on to the next question though. And this will tie into something you'd mentioned, your students, and I want to bring up coaching here in a second, because you're so knowledgeable and you're just full of great information to go through. But if you could look back at your career thus far and pick or choose one or two things that you added to your business, that you saw it go from one level to the next, what really kind of pushed you to another spot, what's that look like for you?
I always talk about real estate agents as 3 distinct levels that you can be. So, and bear with me because everything in my world goes back to like farm analogies. So there's
I love it.
Here. So the first one is when you're just a newborn baby chick. You're like really cute and you're really fluffy and you're really naive and you're super vulnerable, right? These like just cute little baby chicks.
Yep.
A lot of baby chicks, you feed them leads or you feed them, grain, whatever. Mm-hmm. They're totally reliant on the outside world, and they eventually will grow into a chicken. Mm-hmm. And if you spend time around chickens, they're nasty creatures. Like they're always moving and they're like really frantic and they're kind of gross and they're like have those nasty chicken feet and they're like clawing and scratching, and like while their bodies get bigger, their head never does. Have you ever noticed that about chickens? Like
I never thought of it that way. I never thought of it that way, Sara.
The only thing they're good to do is to eat. Like they're great, but most agents struggle because their head never gets bigger. They stay and they're reliant on somebody feeding them, either, bought leads or, they're constantly looking and scratching around. Like maybe they get their own worm from time to time, but for the most part, they're just kind of like looking with their mouths open, like, hey, can somebody else figure this out for me?
Right.
So to transition to the next phase, I call it the crow. And the crow is kind of like, the crow's kind of a badass bird. Like they're fairly self-sufficient. They can get a lot done. They can live off of garbage, which is quite a skill, really, if you think about it. Like
versatile, very versatile.
Yeah, like they're very resourceful. There's some good stuff about being a crow, but to get from a chicken to a crow, you basically need knowledge and experience. So knowledge and experience that's inevitably going to happen so long as you are growing your head, and you're also doing the work. You put in the work long enough, you stop being like a newborn chicken. And you start being, a little bit self-sufficient, you're able to do stuff. But the flip side is that crows are super annoying.
Okay.
It's painfully annoying. I mean, they're the symbol of death, right? Like there's a reason why people are kind of afraid of them, right? And most real estate agents, people see you coming and they cross the street, like pre-COVID, right? They're like, I just, you know what I mean? I don't mean to make a joke out of it.
No, you're good. You're good.
You know what I mean? Like I feel like a lot of agents are, they're loud, they're bold, but it's a little bit of abrasiveness that kind of goes on. And what's a crow's like Achilles heel? They are very prone to falling for shiny objects. Right? That's like most agents, right?
Okay.
Like they really become, you're good at your job, but you're constantly struggling and you just feel like you're surviving on garbage. And those are the classic agents who are, you're selling houses, you're buying leads, you're trying all this stuff, but you're just frustrated. And you get together just in groups of crows and just like complain about stuff all the time. You're all like up on the wire and you're all like making a racket and it's gross and like,
what's going on?
So then in order to progress to the mastery level, and I would say a mastery is like an eagle. And the biggest difference between a chicken and an eagle is just think about their movement. Think about focus. A chicken moving all the time, right? They're constantly just pecking and moving. And like, even when they sleep, I swear they're moving when they sleep. They're like twitching. And like, and like, just never stop, right?
Yeah.
But an eagle is always still. When you see an eagle, like if it's flying, it's still. If it's on earth, it's still. The only time it's not is when it's eating something. But even when it's eating something, it's like really fast. It's that focus.
Wow.
So in order to get from the crow level to the eagle level, that's where you truly have to become a master of focus. You have to sharpen your weapons. Think of it like, if you ever looked like up close at like an eagle, like they're scary. Like their beak is like terrifying, and their claws are like huge, and yet they're just like, they just sit there like on a fence post, and they're always still.
Right.
And I think a lot of the big transition between being in the middle like a crow and being an eagle is mastering yourself and your own emotions. I've always said an agent's success in real estate is directly proportionate to their ability to control their emotions. So if you want to be an incredible negotiator, would you rather be somebody who is at the poker table and you draw a bad hand and it's all over your face? Like a crow would be like, oh my God, crow, I'm so stuck. This is a horrible situation. Or would you rather be cool, calm, and collect?
Right.
I'd way rather play against a crow than an eagle.
Oh, for sure. That'd be easy to read. Join the game.
Real estate, you have to start to realize it's not a game of selling houses. Selling houses is your job, but your business is people. And in order to serve people at a mastery level, you have to come with that service mindset first.
Yes.
And you can't do it if you're what most of us are, dancing around us being the hero. That's what we're taught. That's real estate traditional marketing. Is like, look at me, I'm number one, I'm so amazing, I'm so great, I'm this, I'm that. No one cares.
Right.
It turns people off. It's like that loud, noisy crow that everybody avoids. Or if you're very good at what you do, they can just look at you and be like, yeah, pretty sure I don't want to go up against that thing.
Yeah, right.
And as you start to kind of develop, it becomes like you have to put in, like if you ever watch an eagle take off, they put in a massive amount of effort to get up to cruising altitude, but then they're just cruising along. And all of that massive effort is building systems. A crow doesn't have systems. A crow is flying by the seat of their pants. They don't know where their next meal, like no one really in real estate knows where their next meal is coming from, but we don't really know, right? Like it's frantic all over the place, where an eagle works extremely hard to develop things that are very focused and streamlined. There's only one way to do things.
Right.
My world, there's only one possible progression. Real estate is not a complicated business. It's the same thing over and over and over again. It's like a restaurant. Sure. If people come in, they order, they eat, they leave. Are you going to run like a In-N-Out burger? Or are you going to run fine dining? Or are you going to have like a really good family style business where people line up out the door? That's what I want. Some people want the high-end business. Some people want the In-N-Out burger. There's nothing wrong with any of those models. But I would rather be the eagle soaring in the sky than the crow or the chicken, just because the eagle has lots of downtime. The eagle gets to do fun stuff.
Yeah.
Where the crow is just always stressed out all the time and not very profitable because they're spending all their energy doing everything. And the chicken is just waiting for the next meal. Right. So really, like the tips, and I know like you'll remember the birds, but the reason for the birds is so you have something in your mind to kind of solidify and justify in your mind when you feel like you're a chicken. All you're doing is buying leads, because there are agents out there who that's how they've got all their business. Correct. And especially right now, like that's fine, but who's filling out lead forms? I hear all the preachers from the rooftops saying, oh, now you need to call people and cold call and hit up neighbors and all of this stuff. I'm like, is that a crow activity? Is that a chicken activity? What would be the eagle activity right now? And sometimes the eagle is being in alignment with your highest self. It's that moment where you ask, what would I want right now? It's the golden rule. Sure. The golden rule of business is always, always bring more value than you cost. And how do you bring value to someone's life? You don't take from them, you give first. So the evolution really went from my career being about me. Really at the beginning it was just me struggling. Sure. It wasn't like me being an egomaniac. It was like me just trying to be good. And I'm like anybody. I'm not perfect. I've failed multiple times. I've done things that are right and wrong. And I've always tried my best, I think is the one thing that I would say. And
Love it.
the key is knowledge and experience, and then developing that into mastery of systems and emotion.
And that analogy is going to stick in my head forever. What you just broke down with the chick and the chicken and the crow and the eagle. I think that that's a beautiful progression or evolution. And you can equate that to anybody in any business process. I mean, we're starting out in somewhere and then we end up a certain place with enough time, effort, and expertise that's along the way. Something that really stood out to me as you were speaking as well, and hopefully it did to the audience, whether you're watching or listening, looking at it from the standpoint of we're not the hero. It's not about us, and it never should be about us. And at the end of the day, the consumer does not care about us in that aspect. It's what's in it for them. How are they going to have the spotlight? How are they going to be taken from point A to point B? And how are you going to help them with that? Now, the fact that if you have a track record and you've been around for a certain amount of time and you do have systems in place to get things done, at the end of the day, if they don't get to know, like, and trust you, and really address to them that you understand what they're going through, and here's how I'm going to help you with these processes. They don't care who you are. If you can't hit those first two things, it doesn't matter, because that's the focus. But you're building rapport, getting to know, like, and trust does matter, and that helps seal the deal, if you will, into a transaction or relationship. But you shouldn't look at it this way. I mean, I love the fact that we're not the heroes. They're the heroes. We need to guide them through their life and their process. And I love that message that you said there, Sara. And I think that anybody who's watching or listening, I think you should ask yourself, what stage am I at in my life? Am I the chick? Am I the chicken, right? Am I the crow, or am I the eagle? And, no matter what that phase is, we should always be looking to improve, because even if you are the eagle, there's a 1% of the eagles, right? So just like any other aspect. And how do you do that? And how do you formulate that? We didn't dive super deep into specific details, but what I do want to mention into it is, Sara, so you have coaching students. So when it comes down to it, key real estate coaching, would you mind sharing a little bit about that for the audience? Like, what's it about? How can they get a hold of you that way? Just a little detail before we keep moving on.
Yeah, for sure. I got into real estate coaching completely by accident. Okay. I love helping agents. I love helping people just in general. And I think if there's any one thing that I love more than anything, it's code cracking. It's figuring out, like, what's the nugget, like, in there? And it turns out this is a really cool thing to be able to talk about and work with coaching clients on. So I started just kind of off of a Facebook post. I posted a couple of years ago. I was in Hawaii. Someone, my coach at the time, was bugging me. He's like, you should be a real estate coach. And I was like, no, I'm not a real estate coach. It's fine. I thought about real estate coaches about how I thought about real estate agents. I thought they were, like, cheesy and hokey and, like, kind of full of, like, a bunch of hypothetical stuff they'd never actually done.
Sure.
And I've never been someone to really need a coach, right? Like, I've never been like, can you call me and ask me if I brush my teeth in the morning? Like, I just will do the work, right?
Right.
But coaching, of course, is not all about that. It's about having somebody to expand your mind and help you get from level to level. You don't become a great athlete just by reading books about the sport or by watching the sport. You have to do it.
Sure.
And you can't do it yourself and know, because we're all blind to our own weaknesses. So me having my own coach really helped me realize, oh, well, this is a service that people would definitely be interested in. So started off, put a Facebook post out. I think I had 15 coaching clients that week. Wow. And I was like, oh, I guess this is like a thing. I guess I should probably do this thing. Wow. So now I work with coaching clients. So I help people, like, one-on-one. And then I've always loved teaching, as it turns out. So I made an online course program called the Sell More, Live More Academy.
Love it.
And it's kind of like a hybrid, like, live training, because I'm like I think most real estate agents are like me. Hopefully they're like goldfish, like they need something that's like live, interactive, in person. So we do live training, live Q&A, and then lots of, like, worksheets and modules. And I totally, this is an example of one of my worksheets. This is like my teaching table.
Love it.
It's kind of like Darren Hardy. He's like my hero after that thing where he gave us the booklet. He's like filling the stuff. So we do all of that stuff, and we really walk people through how to sell more real estate, obviously, but coming from that place of, like, up leveling between all those levels, and then also how to live more life. And I am not a psychologist. This is none of my coaching is about like lie back on the sofa, let's talk about your deepest childhood memories. Like,
Right.
it is like, who are you? That's the most significant thing I think that's missing in the coaching space, is everybody's being talked to as if they're the same person. Most real estate agents that I work with are a very particular skill set.
Right.
They're people who are very successful, either like super badass women, like they're just ridiculously amazing, but they're struggling with that live more part where they're like, my whole life is being tunnel vision. And it's kind of like, we don't take it away. We're not telling people you can't be a winner. You can't want to win like so passionately, but let's just add some layers around it and set some boundaries and kind of work with who you are. And that's kind of the funnest part of taking agents into these, 6 different agent types and all this stuff that I love kind of processing and thinking and building out their own unique program. Okay. I think a lot of it is like, follow my program and do it how I do it. And I'm going to talk about myself. It's not like that at all. It's like, who are you? Are you a giver? Are you someone who puts others ahead of yourself and has a hard time setting boundaries? Are you a celebrity where you're constantly talking about yourself, but you have tons of followers, but very little business? A lot of we all fall in these different categories. So then everything that we build upon is based on who you are as an agent, rather than like, I think you should just try and be an eagle off of day one. It's like, it's your time. Is winning to you that you get to help people every day, or is winning to you that you get to like be number one in your office? And not one isn't wrong. And I think that we forget that in real estate, especially in a time like right now. So much of the messaging is coming from celebrities and winners. And the celebrities are like, follow me, I've got, like, look at my butt. Like that's how it is, right? Yeah. If you don't, I've heard that quote, like, if you don't come out of this with a new skill, you lack discipline or something. I'm like, what? What time to be like working on your butt? Like, seriously, like, it blows my mind. Like, literally, I'm like, oh my God, but that's part of the world. Right. And it's not about winning for everybody. Sure. Some people, it's about giving. Some people, it's about connecting with people. And it's not wrong if you're a winner. If you had a hank for a dad and you really, really like ticking off boxes, like, that's okay. But we're humans first. I know, like, we're on a bunny trail, but yeah, anyway, there you go.
No. Sara, this is really, really great. And it's giving everybody the idea of kind of what they'd be getting involved with and really understanding that background. And I'm a firm believer, there is not a one size fits all. So for anybody to say that, yeah, you do these steps and it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to have success. That's pretty ridiculous. You might have a certain amount that have success, but it's not going to work for everybody. So the more tailored or bespoke approach is always my thought process, and the best of the best feel the same way. Anybody who's trying to squeeze a bunch of people into one size fits all, they're just trying to make a bunch of money. And unfortunately, they're going to accomplish that, but are their clients going to get the results that are needed? I don't know. So I'm not judging anybody, but I like what your style is. So how can people get a hold of you with the coaching program? What's the website, or what's the place to go to? And that way I can link it down below.
They can go to my regular Facebook profile is always like the easiest. So I'm like, just send me a message. Okay. That's only the easiest. My email's on there. Okay, cool. I have a coaching page called Key Real Estate Coaching. I'm really like, it's just how I run my real estate business. I'm like, there's no big contracts. We just we talk, and I just want to help people who want to be there. And that's how everything in my world is. It's like, when it feels right, this is how it is. So even with coaching, like I have a sellmorelivemorecoaching.com. They can go to the site, they can fill out the form if they want, but they can just message me too.
Okay. And I like that. And I'll have links in the comments down below, but going back to what you had mentioned earlier about attracting the right people, I'm a firm believer as well that light attracts light. And that's what you're representing out of the community, the marketplace, not just with the consumer, but obviously with your coaching students and everything that's going through. I want to shift gears though on this particular interview. And this is the tricky part for a lot of Titans when it comes down to it, because there's showing a little bit of vulnerability potentially, depending on what you're comfortable sharing. This is the challenge question, Sara. So if you could look back at your career and your life thus far and really take a look at a challenge that you overcame, whether it was personal or professional, that you learned from, that you became stronger because of it. What's that look like for you? And I'll kind of predicate this a little bit differently too, is we all have challenges and struggles. No one's exempt, whether it's in the past, now, or into the future. But again, I'm a firm believer, it's not so much what happens, but what we learn and what we can share. So if you're comfortable sharing a personal or professional challenge, what's that look like for you, Sara?
Well, anybody who's been around me knows that I'm about as open a book as you can possibly get. So,
Awesome.
I'll share a lot on stage about things in life, and there's a lot, I think, to be learned from real story. We can give anyone a checklist of, especially right now, like, you should feel like this, you should do this, but the only way through hard times is through them. You can't just walk around them.
Nope.
Probably the most like profound and most difficult part of my life was in 2012. I was expecting my first daughter.
Okay.
And I was, like anybody, super excited, very, very low risk. Everything was going great, like super healthy. You're always that person who doesn't think it's going to happen to them. Like, you're just like, oh, we call them the naive people. And we love the naive people because if only to be a naive person. And long story short, my daughter passed away. Just like I was 9 months pregnant. And I just felt kind of off one day. I was out showing houses. It was like as big as a house. And I just felt like something was off. And I just stopped. And this is like classic Sara, like, your dad's a farmer. I was like, oh no, it's fine. I'll just stop on the way home. I was like talking to my husband from like my Bluetooth, like my realtor car Bluetooth. Yeah. I was like, oh, it's fine. I just feel something's kind of weird. Like, I don't know what it is. But I'll be home in like an hour. Okay. And the next phone call I had to make was telling, I was at the hospital and our daughter had passed away.
Boy.
And yeah, the weird thing is that you're still part of this world, right? Like the night before, we had like prayed for her like healthy delivery, and we were just in a line. We felt like, oh, everything is so great, like we're so excited, like business as usual was how we thought. And then blindsided. Wow. Like absolute blindsided. And the first thing that came to my mind was, well, I guess like this happens in nature, like it happens in animals, like it's not like a thing. And I was asking for like right away, I was like, I need an autopsy, I need closure, I need to know what happened, right? Okay. Like that's how our world works. We need to know why. Look at the crisis we're in right now.
Right.
We don't want to know why. And everyone has a conspiracy theory or this, or was it a bat, or was it whatever? Sure. Who's trying to cover it up? Who's this? Who's that? Because that's in trauma. Your mind tries to find an explanation, because if you can find the explanation, then you have control.
I see.
So I went through years of questioning myself. I wasn't a crack addict. Like I wasn't doing anything that was like high risk. There was absolutely zero. But in my mind, I'm like, well, did I roll over the wrong way when I was sleeping? Was I working too hard? Was I stressed? Was I, my husband and I had a probably like hormone-induced fight the week before. Did that do it? And because just like a survivor of assault, a survivor of any trauma, you're trying to find something you can control in an uncontrollable situation.
Wow.
So the hardest thing, obviously, losing my daughter who I loved, I still had to go through. I gave birth to her like 12 hours later, and people always want to know that. I'm like, yeah. That's what you got to do. They're like, no, you don't get a C-section. There's no free pass, kid. Like, wow. Here we go. And there you are. I had two best friends at the time who both had kids within 2 weeks of me, and they were both totally fine, healthy babies. Wow. And what I wasn't expecting was all of the emotions and the fallout that happened. Okay. And the emotions were, of course, like, you go through everything. And it's just like what everybody's going through right now. I went
Mm-hmm.
through, you can't really be in denial, but you just like every day you wake up in a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in this nightmare of like the thing you love more than yourself. If you have kids, you love your kids more than yourself.
Oh, agreed. Yep.
Like I wish all the time, I was like, I just wish that I would be gone and she would be here. Or it's such excruciating pain, like you don't even know how to process it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was the follow to friends. Because when something really hard happens, people are afraid. They're not just afraid of saying the wrong thing, they're afraid of that same fate happening to them. They're afraid of the chronic illness. They're afraid of the child dying. They're afraid, especially where, it's like this gray zone. Like if she would have only lived for 20 minutes, it would have been far less taboo. Like it's this, I lost all of my girlfriends. Every single friend who I had at the time was either attracted to coming over to watch the show, which is truly what some people are. They just want to be part of it so that they can gossip about your reaction or your lack of reaction. I had people criticizing me for being not sad enough because I'm such a private person. People would come over and I wouldn't be bawling at the table with them. I'd like make them tea. Like my family came over the night I got home from the hospital and I made them all tea. Like this just, I was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this. Like, can you all leave so I can like leave this thing? Like, I don't know what, it's just like how I am, right?
Right.
To serve people. I don't know.
Sure.
Like, can you go home now? And remember, like I was really giant. I was not just like, like not going through any physical changes, right? Like you're huge. Like after you just have a kid, like you still look pregnant. And the thing that helped at the time, and why I'm acting so differently now than I think most coaches and realtors and stuff is I went the avoidance route.
Okay.
Full blown. 2 weeks after, they make these like these stretchy belts for women who just had kids. It's very glamorous. It's a real
yeah, getting the inside scoop.
So these stretchy belts, it's kind of like, imagine like this notebook, but like a big piece of kind of like stretchy gauze, and you put it around your waist and you Velcro it and you like suck it in really, really tight. Because like all like, you just had like this giant baby. So you're in there and like, this is too much information. But
No, this is good.
You also have like pads over your breasts and you're, because you're like leaking and the whole thing is like a horrible nightmare. Yeah. This is a physical ceremony. I mean, it obviously was a horrible nightmare, but
sure.
I went to work 2 weeks after because for the time that I could be doing my job as a real estate agent, I could forget. Okay. I would joke, we'd say, I'm just part of the normal people. And that's why you see people right now diving into work. Right. They're working harder. They're like, pour it on. That's, the Hankism. Work harder, go to the gym, get a routine. And I think at that time, it was just how I processed. And I don't see anything wrong with that if that's how you have to process things right now. I just know I was trying to go around the grief. I was trying to go around and just, even though it was just for, a couple hours at a time, and there's nothing wrong with that either. I know like the bright spot is some of my days in the last couple of weeks have just been having a conversation about real estate. Right. Like, thank God I got to like think about, talk about something where I'm like useful and I'm not just sitting at home, like feeling totally like a bump on a log, like whatever. Right. But the ultimate thing that I learned was mindfulness for one. And it wasn't like, I was pretty choked at God at the time. Okay. Like I'll admit, like I did not handle it like, oh, I'm, like the sweetest martyr in the world. Like, you see people who have bad things happen and they're just like, I'm grateful for the lesson. I was pissed. Sure. Like I was like, why me? This sucks. It's not like I felt like, I deserved better completely, but I was like, I prayed. Like, have you ever seen that scene in Seabiscuit where Tobey Maguire, he gets fouled on the racetrack and he's like so angry. He's like, but he fouled me. That's how I felt. I was like, and I met these people and they're all like, everything happens for a reason. I'm like, F that, man. Like nothing happens for, like your child doesn't die for a reason. It doesn't make you a better person. Everybody out there right now and they're, like my feed, I'm sure everybody's is. Sure. People are dying.
Right.
And people are like, oh, this is, we're all going to come out of this and like hug and learn all these lessons. I'm like, that's fine to say when you're one of the naive people.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's your partner,
Right.
you're not like, oh, God did this to teach us a lesson about like how we should, I don't know, plant trees or like hug llamas or whatever. Like, I don't care about that. And nobody is going through a hard time. It's like, oh, this is just part of the greater plan. Like, thank God hundreds of thousands of people are like million plus now are infected. Like, this is a great, like, thanks. It is as much a primal battle of good and evil, of contrast. And, you don't have to think of it as like the white bearded God and like the red horned devil.
Sure.
Just the contrast that exists, like life and death. And there's all these wild cards. Like, the biggest thing that comes out of the whole difficulty and loss and grief is that bad things sometimes happen.
They do.
And it's not bad things happen so that we learn some lesson. So I could be a motivational speaker talking to audiences on stage. You know how quickly every motivational speaker, air quotes, would like just backtrack all the hard stuff that happened in their life just to get their kid back, or their limb back, or their ability to walk back, or like whatever all the motivational speakers talk about. Like,
sure.
I'm not thinking of this as like, wow, this is a great blessing. What I know is that my grief counselor said it the best, and she's one of the most amazing, bravest women I've ever met in my life, and works day in, day out with people who lost kids. And she said to me, she's like, well, number one, all of your friends leaving you is normal. They're afraid of you. It's called a just world theory. They think if they are affiliated with you, if you are a good person, then bad things can happen to good people. But if they make you into a villain, if they separate themselves from you, they're separating themselves from the badness.
Unreal.
So, and everybody I know, you can talk to, like at least I did, anybody I talked to who had lost a child, who had gone through a terminal illness diagnosis, who'd gone through, an abusive situation that they escaped. Frequently, the victim or the survivor receives the blame to help the naive people feel like they have control.
Wow.
And at first it hurts a lot. So you're in pain and you're in judgment and you're lashing out. It's horrible. But eventually you start to learn grace.
Okay.
And you learn they're doing that because they're scared. The people right now who are digging in and shedding from the rooftops and trying frantically to sell their stuff in the middle of this it's a turning point for our humanity, like our generation.
Right.
It's a fear reaction, and that's okay. Like it's part of how people react. The biggest thing was really learning how to just be present in every moment.
Okay.
And as the grief counselor said, she said, you won't learn them today. You won't learn them a year from today. It's going to take you a very long, long time. But eventually, you will receive gifts from this. It won't be immediately.
Right.
You're not like there and like, you're told, you're like, oh, you're supposed to be so grateful that your kid died and all your friends left. And, everything you held as a normal faith person has disappeared. Like, it has not worked. Like, the prayers didn't work.
Right.
So your whole system, I talk about God as being my why, my number one, but I was like, WTF, God, like, what? But the reality now, all of this time later, is I haven't ever figured out. We never knew. It was a long story, but we ended up being kind of lied to at the hospital about autopsies and all of this stuff. Probably mostly because the caregiver was concerned that she had made a mistake that she would get sued for if we found out. And it was like this really kind of nasty side thing. And I just said, I was like, anything wouldn't change what happened.
Right.
You don't get back your people. We can't as a world go back in time to December and close down all of our borders and shut and ground all airplanes. Nope. Now it's 2020. We know, like, that's a hard part of our brains. You go back in your mind and you're like, if only. Right. And you live in a world of would have, should have, could have, all that stuff. And it's none of that stuff matters.
Right.
What do I do today? How do I show up today? And those gifts now, the one thing that I heard in my heart just as I found out, was like a message. My daughter's name was Ruby, a message from her, and that was, be brave. And now that you've been through this, what worse thing could happen?
Right.
And so, it's not really my greatest desire in the morning, like, to be totally blunt. And I'm not that psyched about getting up on stages and talking to people and sharing my story a lot of the time.
Sure.
It's really hard. Like, it's not just like, because I know it's all of these things all over again. I've had people who are so uncomfortable being around me, they don't want me in their space. They don't, I've been given gigs and they're like, you can come and talk and you can give our, keynote, but just don't mention that part.
Wow.
I understand. Like, I'm not like, oh my God, I'm so offended I get up there like a vigilante and go into it. I'm just like, I get it. It's a professional setting. Some people don't want to talk about deep heart stuff because they're at a work seminar. And you have to remember there's a balance. Everything in life isn't about meditation and God and all of that stuff. Some of it is about, let's go ride our horses and get to be good at something.
Right.
Let's serve our clients. And like, real estate isn't a job. I think we sometimes make it into it, but sometimes we think, oh, it's a job where we're saving lives and we're changing people. I'm like, you're kind of helping them move. Right. I joke that I'm a professional light switch operator.
That's great.
You have to kind of just remember that in every moment, you're just there. And you can make choices. You can choose to see the beauty in things eventually.
Sure.
You can choose how you act, and you can choose judgment. You have all these little choices. And maybe the biggest gift that you get is, yes, a little bit of courage, but maybe you just know less than most people. Fundamentally, you know less. You know that it might not work out. And maybe that makes you have more faith, or it makes you work harder. It makes you, I don't know, less afraid or something. But it's a hard thing. And I think we're all going through a hard thing now.
Agreed.
And there's no thing in this that I'm going to say this is going to be the greatest lesson of your life, and you're going to come out this like an amazing human and the world's best real estate agent, and your clients are all going to love you because you dropped off groceries on their doorstep, or you didn't, or you took 58 online courses, or you got abs, or you didn't. It just is.
Right.
And everybody just has to go through every minute how they're going through it. I remember the most insulting thing was waking up the morning after I came home from the hospital with like literally an empty car seat and an empty crib, and the sun came up. And I was like, F you, sun. Like, really? How do you come up the next day? Like,
Today, really?
On, right?
Oh my gosh.
The birds are like chirping. I'm like, could you not just for one day, like, please just. But I think that's how our world is feeling, right? The sun just comes up.
Yeah, it does. The world keeps spinning. People's lives keep moving forward, and Sara, the fact that you had gone through that and mentioned that, first of all, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's not easy to air things out like that, especially in front of a live audience and out there to the world. And I think that I'm so honored that you shared that story. It's very personal and intimate. I just want you to know that I know that there's so many people that are watching or listening to this that have been through that same thing. And I know that they're hearing this or seeing it, and they're feeling a very certain kind of way about that. So no matter the consequence of us saying this, that we don't wish that we go through these hardships or timeframes, and good, bad things happen to everybody. It's not bad things happen to good people or vice versa. And there is duality in everything. There's light and dark, there's good and bad. So, but what you had mentioned out there is really just to really hopefully help settle someone's heart or mind who has gone through this, or somebody who is potentially going to go through this. It's extremely common. Miscarriage is extremely common. Things along those lines happen all the time. And the sad reality is there's so many people that don't talk about it. They're shamed. It is taboo. And I don't think that's right. I mean, you got to be ready when you're ready and have the conversations if you feel comfortable. But the amount of people that you're able to touch with that story, it's very compelling. And I'm just glad that you had mentioned that. I really am. And I know that everybody out there who's watching or listening is very happy the fact that you shared that story because it makes an impact. It really does. And I know you're inspiring people all day, every day with that. So can't thank you enough, Sara, truly. Honestly, it was really, really good. I do want to switch to, I guess, a slightly different topic. And this is actually one of my favorite questions, going on a softer tone into that. So we got through the hard stuff, everybody, but this is actually one of my favorite questions. And I love the fact that you had already kind of alluded into it. The woulda, shoulda, coulda, what if we could have gone back and done this? We can't do that. No one has a time machine. No one has a crystal ball. You can't go back in time and change things. But this question is not designed for you to necessarily say, what would you do if you could go back? It's more of a message to your younger self. If you could go back in some form or fashion and give a piece of advice, not to change anything, but to really just advise yourself or say something to your younger variation, whether it was a year ago or whether it was, when you were little Sara, what would you say to your younger self?
So it's like one of those podcast questions that I hear and I'm always like, what would I ever say? Like, what's the real answer? And
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing would probably be what I've struggled with my whole life, probably more than anything, is just believing in myself and that my voice is worth being listened to.
Okay.
But at the same time, I think it's good not to know. I don't think if I could go back and say anything, I don't know if I would.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd be like, oh, everything's going to be great, or be more brave, or be more this, or be more that. Like I don't think I would have anything to say. I don't think I, have wisdom or anything that I would just be like, pray more or, be more this or that, or really anything. I think maybe one of the things would be, savor every little moment.
Okay.
But I kind of do that anyway. I always have. It's like, I think if you're an artist in any form, like that's what music is about. That's what the art of like cow horse is about. It's about this, like that moment of flow. That's like playing in the middle of an orchestra and you have, the solo and the whole, like, if you ever think about an orchestra, it's a magical thing.
Oh yeah, for
like,
sure.
100 minds all together, like making one sound. And it's truly one sound with all these people. And a horse experience, it's the same. It's like, you're like Pegasus, like their legs are my legs. And I all of a sudden am like this amazing superhero where I get to like run so fast. And, everything in our sport is about accentuating the horse's genius. It's not like, let me show you what I made the horse do. It's very different from most equine sports.
Oh, I love that.
And I think that, that's just, I'd be like, maybe you just keep going. It's going to suck sometimes. It's going to be great sometimes. And just, it is what it is. And yeah, I don't have a really good answer, I guess.
No, but I read between the lines into some of that, and hopefully other people are picking this up as well. That's not to change anything in the past. What we went through made us who we are, all the things that are going through and through. But, when you're talking about being brave and knowing your worth and really of the words that you're speaking, that's something that we can't go back and change, but we can change today. Everybody who's watching or listening to this can take those into consideration and say, yeah, my words are worth something and I need to be brave and make sure that I'm doing these things and pay attention, be in the moment. We can all do that right now and we can reflect our current situation and our future with that mentality. And that's why I like that question. I really, really think it's great advice for everybody now. Obviously, it would have been great if we could go back, but we can't. So but I think that's really, really applicable stuff. There's no doubt, all the way through and through. And for me, it's really just the attainable information that we can use today. The actions that we take today are going to have reflection and ripple effects into eternity through our lives, but not just through us, but through our siblings and our parents and our children and grandchildren and anybody in the communities that go through. So I think that this is really, really great stuff. Not to go too deep on everybody that way, but it's important for us to hear. It's important for us to have these real conversations and not just the superficial ones that a lot happens out there. I'm not calling anybody out, but so I do want to shift gears. And this is actually one of the absolute favorites when it comes to the show. Besides the taking a look at your business and growth, it's how you're feeding your mind, because everybody wants to learn from the titans. Everybody wants to grow their minds very similar to how you're doing it, or at least try. So Sara, if you could, kind of share whatever you're comfortable with as far as how you're feeding your mind, books you're reading or have read, podcasts you're listening to, influencers or coaches, if it's conferences, masterminds, how are you feeding your mind?
Well, I love the Tiger King.
Oh my gosh. Netflix. There we go. There's a plug for Netflix. I don't know if I want to put that in the comments down below.
Put that. Watch the Tiger King. That's this deep conversation. That's where it ended up.
I love it. I love it.
I was talking with a coaching client about the show this morning, and about how it's an unlikely tragedy. It's a classic tragedy, right? You love the villain. He's constantly making the worst decisions. It's like literally like a Shakespearean tragedy.
Right.
And I think the first thing that we forget about in this realm of self-improvement, we're all obsessed. I've been somebody, I love reading books. I'm like a super nerd because I've been trained. Read books is part of your competitive strategy to like please Hank, essentially. If you get 100%, right? If you're like, I read all these books, I'm so smart. What we forget is that the fine arts are the most important things to feed our mind.
Okay.
Truly, there is nothing greater at expanding your mind than really incredible classics, like classical music, like listening to a symphony. You're accessing different parts of your brain than you normally do. So that's number one. And I know, like Tiger King, it's kind of a joke, but kind of not, because it's a masterpiece of like a tragic story. You have this hero, and his heroic journey it's absolutely like he's the archetypal tragic hero. Right. And I love things that are like, there's no wonder to me that caught on right now. But to be more serious about your stuff, yes, watch Tiger King and think about it from an intellectual level and blah blah blah. But one of the most significant things I learned about was the science of neuroplasticity. Okay. And we've heard a lot about like those, the neuroplasticity games that have since been debunked and they don't actually work, but there is proven science that your brain is able to expand, like actually expand. Your neural pathways will grow new pathways. You'll coat like new myelin sheaths, and you'll get these new things going on in your brain that actually make you smarter as time goes on. Wow. And in order to do that, you must challenge yourself in new, novel ways. So my most significant, most important focus in a day is, what's something new I can do? What's a new skill that I can develop? And what's something I can do that I suck at? Okay. And we forget this. I think we're in this world where we become, like you said, with great humility, I'll let you call me a titan, but it's so weird. But we think once we're up on this pedestal, that's where we're like at our best. It's actually where we're at our most fragile. Interesting. We're at our most volatile, weakest point when we think we've made it. So the best achievers, once you make it in one area and you start to kind of, become that eagle, or you start to kind of gain mastery of something, you must intentionally seek out things where you're going to go into an arena and you're going to be a beginner. Wow, love it. That's what I do with horses all the time. I mean, I didn't grow up on a ranch. I grew up in the city. Right. I'm competing against people who spent their life on horseback. And for me to crack that code, like, how do I go into this? How do I learn how to like be a really good horse person? How do I feel, that moment? I love snowboarding. Sure. My husband is a ridiculously good athlete. He's one of those like freaks that's just good at everything he does, like literally without trying. Like, he's also really cool. So he's just like, he'll just look like he's not even like exerting an effort, but will like just crush it at some new sport that he's never like. He's awesome. It's all really mental game. He gets tired like anyone. He just doesn't process it the same as most people. He's like a freak of nature. Sure. In a good way, in the best of ways. In an amazing way, obviously. Yeah. He's so cool. And just doing things like that, like going snowboarding and going powder skiing and, stuff that isn't like a supernatural thing for me, just being brave in multiple areas.
Wow, that's great.
I love books. I could read books till the cows come home. I love, like right now, I'm like this in my Bible.
Okay.
These are like biblical times.
Right.
You know, I pick up like, you know, books on, you know, habits or high achievement. I'm like, this is embarrassing. I shouldn't be reading this right now. Like, it just doesn't feel right in like this time. I have a podcast, and I've actually put it on hold for just a couple of weeks because I'm like now a person where I'm like, okay, I need to be like in this right now. Sure. I can't, you know, it's just being a weird thing, but it's the baddest moment of real estate. I love horse podcasts. Okay. Obsessed with horse podcasts. Just one's about cow horse. There's one called Cow Horse Full Contact.
Okay, I was going to ask you for a few of them for sure.
Yeah, it's called Full Contact. It's my most favorite podcast in the world. It is. Okay. Some episodes will be 2.5 hours long.
Get out of here.
And I can't wait to listen because it's the originals, like the OGs. Like imagine interviewing like Dave Lineker.
Sure.
I want to hear Dave Lineker's story for 2.5 hours.
Oh, all day.
You know what I mean? I'm not like, don't just ask him a question. Like, and they like kind of like what you're doing. You know, if there's like a nugget that they really like that one of these like founders, like the Godfathers, will drop, then they're like, oh, tell us more. Tell us more. Like these tough old school cowboys, like hiring sports psychologists at professional sports teams. And you're like you think they wouldn't like admit to that because they're these tough cowboys? But it's amazing listening to just how they work. And if you want to become like a really good, strong, ethic real estate agent, go hang out with horse trainers. Go hang out with people who are professional athletes. In just any athlete, like you think that you work hard? Yeah, you don't. You suck.
Sure.
Like, really, you know, like they start every morning. My horse trainer, one of them, they call him Iceman because he's like literally like the most consistent human being I've ever met in my whole life.
Oh, I love it.
And he wakes up same time every day. His horses are fed the same time every day. He like harrows the arena same time every day. Works all the horses, sometimes 2 or 3 times if they're really young. And when he works them, complete emotional neutral. Wow. It is a phenomenal thing to watch. Like just being around them, I'm like, because you think of real estate agents, they're usually so emotional. And a lot of horse people are really emotional and they never win. But he consistently churns out these winners over and over and over again because he's just so consistent and so good at what he does, right? Yeah. So you learn all these lessons from other places. And there's so many things that you can learn if you look outside of our little bubble. There's a lot of stuff that you can learn. You know, I picked out, I know you were going to ask this, so I picked out like 3 of the books that I'm reading. I'm always reading like 12 books at once. Like literally, I never only read one book. I think I have like 16 on my phone. But I'm like, I just like reading tidbits. So
I love that.
I'll show you because you probably can't read them. This one, Mental Toughness.
Okay.
It's a good one right now. And I got it free for the end. And this one, this is a book that helped me a lot. He wrote this book and Mindfulness for Beginners.
Wow. Okay.
John Kabat-Zinn. And for anybody who hears about mindfulness, and maybe you're not like into paying the $15.99, whatever it is, for the Headspace app right now. I'm like the very most frugal person you'll ever meet. So I'm like, $15.99, that's too expensive.
How dare they?
Like literally, it's worse. But this book is amazing. Mindfulness for Beginners is amazing. It'll just, cool. They're like 2-page lessons. You don't have, and it's like, you don't go into it being like, oh, I suck at this. It's like, oh, it is this. This is nothing to win. Wow. And then Rework, this book. I always pull the covers off on hardcovers, so I don't even know what the cover looks like anymore. But
yeah, I do the same thing. It's funny. I just don't like the way it feels. It kind of, I don't know, it cheapens it for me.
I just don't want to wreck it, and then I lose them. So I don't know what that is. Anyway, those are just a couple examples of books that are kind of applicable to right now.
Right.
But I think it's just the biggest thing I think I could say that probably is different for most people, because you know there's so many podcasts that you can listen to, but the biggest thing for me is find something you're passionate about and focus on becoming really, really good at it, especially when you suck at it, especially when you have to go out in public and potentially really embarrass yourself at it, because you're just going to become better at everything in life that phone call you're afraid of making is not that hard when you're like staring down a cow down the fence, both going, 30 miles an hour.
Right.
And if one of you makes a wrong move, you will flip over and die. And you'll do it in front of all of your friends and all the people you respect.
Mm-hmm.
And God forbid, even worse, your hat would come off. So, you just try.
Wow.
And put yourself in situations where you're not comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Not dangerous, but like do stuff that's hard.
Right.
Don't just think because you got good at selling real estate, that's all there is to life. Like you just get so much better at everything with the harder stuff that you force yourself to do.
I agree. And you're just scratching the surface when you're just putting yourself into one particular bucket or box. And I know that ad is just thrown around quite a bit, but get uncomfortable with, or get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And nothing grows in comfort zones, and that gets thrown around, but there's so much truth to it. You can't grow. If you're doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, you're not going to get there. You have to try new things. And I love the fact that we're talking about neuroplasticity all the way to Tiger King. I mean, we're looking at it from the point of the diversity in your thought process. You should be learning and firing different parts of your brain and thought process. And again, different music. You had mentioned, I mean, all this is so true. One thing is constantly learning, constantly pushing yourself out of those comfort zones, and learning from as many sources as possible to make you the best person possible. And again, not just sticking to one way of doing it, and hearing other people out. And there's so many great podcasts, there's so many great YouTube videos, and there's so many great books. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of information that's out there, but you got to apply it. You got to put the work in. You got to really commit to these things. And it's going back to your earlier comments of focus and, really picking that one thing and moving forward, mastering it. Pick another thing, move forward, master it. I love that commonality through your entire episode here, Sara. I just think it's so beautiful. And I know that there's so many different takeaways that everybody really able to use and implement through their lives, with their entrepreneurs or real estate professionals. I mean, this has just been chock full of amazing stuff. And just so everybody out there knows, as always, I have comments in the comments down below. I'll have links, everything, so you can follow along, connect with Sara, really engage, but then also learn very similar to the way that she is, or at least try to. But Sara, this has been an absolute pleasure and an honor. I want to finish everything else up with a final question. And this one ends up being the quote or mantra that might sum you up as a person, as a professional. What's that look like for you?
I thought about this. I bookmarked like 7 different things. And, I think the biggest mantra that I have is actually just shutting up. Like really. Yeah. I think if there's anything that guides me more than anything, it's not a little phrase or a little something. It's what the words that fill in the empty space, the things that float up from my heart, from God, whatever you want to call it. It's truly that practice of just being quiet. And, those are the things that have changed my life every time. The moments where I've heard, no, your blessing doesn't come from this person. Be brave, mom, like just those little things. That I think is more powerful than any one, cheesy tagline I can give you. It's really, I think we're in a world where when we don't know what to think or we don't know how to feel, we look outside of ourselves. We look outside for leadership. We look outside for a phrase to paint on our wall or a meme to share on our Instagram. And I think while there's so much wisdom that's out there, the biggest wisdom really will come from your own heart. Wow. And so I think that, the thing that guides me more than anything is just that, they call it the still small voice. It's that thing that I don't create it. I don't come up with it. But especially in the hardest of times, which we're in right now, it's already there. You don't need a phrase, you don't need a tattoo. You need to be quiet.
I mean, in those, the still small moments, listening, that's perfect. And everybody should be really reflecting on that thought process in any time frame, whether we're dealing with what we're dealing with now or when this all passes. I think the amount of reflection that can be had and the wisdom that's gained from those situations are extremely valuable. It's difficult. for a lot of professionals, especially at the top tier, to really have those still moments because it's nonstop. But that's where the real magic does happen. And I think that's great advice. And that sums you up beautifully all the way through, Sara. I mean, when you're looking at it from that standpoint, just the reflection points and everything you've been mentioning, I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. And again, I can't thank you enough. I know that your humility won't let me say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. You are an official real estate titan, Sara. So it's dubbed, it's done. Whether you like it or not, it's there. But yeah, I can't thank you enough. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. It's great.
For sure. For sure. And everybody out there, thank you as well for your time and attention, your love and support. If you like what we're doing here with Real Estate Titans, please don't forget to like everything, comment, you know what to do at this point. I do want to give our sponsor a shout out, Lionbolt Media. So if you're looking to grow and scale your business digitally and really expand what you're doing as a real estate professional, go to lionboltmedia.com for more information. We are live every Tuesday and every Friday afternoon with a different Titan, a different location. We'll catch everybody in the next live episode of Real Estate Titans. Take care. See you, Sara.
See ya.